Yes,
So kids do
boys.
recognize a state of gender. You're literally going all over the place. You're saying they don't know what they're talking about. Then you're saying the only reason they're saying they're a girl is because they were told that they're a girl. But then when I ask why they said they were a girl before anything like that even started, you said, well, because they have an understanding of their gender.
No, it's the complexities of it. It's not just the simple, like the simple colors and all that in toys. You know, that's what they understand as far as that, dresses and stuff like that. My sister wears a dress. Hey, I want to wear a dress too, you know,
If you
stuff like
literally
that.
think that
You
that's
don't
all
know
that
the
happened,
you
then I
don't know
don't
the
know what else to tell you. Like you're
you
just
don't
you're
know the
just denying
complexity
reality. I
of
think that it's your mind that's actually malleable because it's clearly been warped by I don't know, Matt Walsh or Blaze TV or Fox News or something because so libs of TikTok, we all know, but they do basically is just post videos of people like being progressive and stuff and then claiming it's grooming. That's kind of their shtick. They posted this the other day and they said the School of Oregon have begun adding menstrual products to men's restrooms after the governor signed a law requiring schools provide free period products in all elementary, middle, and high school bathrooms. And basically what I said about this is that anybody who is angry about this, and I mean this actually, I will debate this if you'd like. Anybody who's actually angry about this is probably an inbred subhuman who should be just taken away to a zoo. Because they're clearly not functioning at a normal human capacity, so much so that they probably just belong in the fucking zoo where people can like pay to see the attraction of the crazy dumb people. So let's just watch the video real quick. So first of all, they complain so much about groomers, yet you have a grown man filming in an elementary school bathroom. Huh. That's a little odd. So they show that there are stalls. There's somebody in this stall, mind you. And then they show this. Oh my god. Oh no. Oh. Oh no. Please, God, no. Why the fuck not? There's a couple things. First of all, if you have a trans boy, might be biologically female and still have periods, they might need a tampon, but they might use the men's bathroom. Second of all, what if you need to get a tampon for your girlfriend? Or something. Like, what's the bad thing about having tampons available in all bathrooms? Oh no. Access to cotton on a string. Oh. Oh god. Oh god. You donated and said dong equals dude, vagina equals hunter. And then you said you were actually interested in talking, so I assume that you actually have some contention with me.
Yeah, sure. I mean, how about the thing you were just talking about with the tampons in the bathroom? Uh,
So you're mad about that?
not one bit. I just find it funny people are, uh, arguing about this, and why liberals are so for it. I mean, what do you think's going to happen? Boys are going to pull the tampons out and stuff them down the toilet or just do funny stuff with it. It's just a waste of time, waste of resources.
I don't think it's a waste of resources. I mean, it would be a waste of resources to take a bunch of toilet paper and flush that down the toilet also.
Yeah, but toilet paper actually has a use for boys.
So do the tampons. There might
Okay.
be trans boys that use the bathroom.
Okay.
So there's that. There's also like what I said before, which is what if the girl's bathroom is all out and then the guy goes into his bathroom and grabs a tampon for his girlfriend?
How about if they need one, they could go to the nurse's office or something
Do you think that
instead
that's
of,
really as first of all, if we're going to talk about wasting resources, now we're wasting a human resource of needing to go to a nurse anytime you need a tampon. That's also kind of uncomfortable. Most people don't want to like walk while they're bleeding like to the nurse's office to ask for a tampon real quick. It's just easier to just go in the bathroom and get one.
no, I just see it as ridiculous. I think it'd be more trouble than it's worth.
So you are mad about it then, or you still don't like it.
I just think it's funny. Like all this trans stuff is just humorous to me. Like I just I don't get it. You know, the whole gender stuff. Uh I mean, what's the difference? You want to be called a boy, you want to be called a girl, who cares? Like
Apparently, a lot of
uh,
people do.
oh, if you look like a guy, then you're probably going to get called a guy even if you're wearing a dress or something, you
Well,
know?
what does it mean to look like a guy?
Uh well, the normal stuff, you know. Isn't it a social construct or whatever? So, uh, what you were just arguing about, how, you know, they want to look like this, they want to look like that. I mean, whatever happened to just being masculine or feminine? You could be a masculine girl and or a feminine guy.
You could be, yeah. But that doesn't,
And
it really ultimately comes down to the self perception and self identification. That's what
okay,
ultimately determines whether or not you are a man or a woman. And then based on that determination, you'll probably take steps to socially present yourself as that identity as well.
well, if that's the case or whatever, then I don't see, you know, any problem with that. You know, it's not a big deal. I don't see why everybody's up in arms about it, especially, I mean, especially, you know, making just such a big deal out of this, you know,
Well, who do you think
if
is making a really big
uh,
deal out of this?
the progressives, I mean, they're the ones rioting and, you know,
I don't know where progressives are rioting about trans people. I mean, there were the BLM riots. That's a whole separate thing, though. But
yeah, but
usually it's the progressives that are trying to stand up for the rights of an already marginalized group, in this case, trans people, in opposition to the Republicans who are consistently trying to pass state legislation to restrict gender affirming care or to restrict trans people from being treated as valid or recognized as their gender identity. Um, so, I mean, if anything, it's kind of the conservatives that are really obsessed with this. I mean, how
okay,
many
but
conservatives have you heard make the exact same joke? You know, I identify as an attack helicopter. Ha ha ha. Like,
yeah, dude, that's cringe as all hell. I totally agree with you right there. But I'm uh going off that point though that you just made, what rights are being taken away from trans people? If anything, they have more rights than,
they do not have more rights.
okay, then what rights are they lacking?
Well, as far as the entirety of the LGBT community, this isn't just trans people, but they oftentimes lack rights when it comes to equal treatment in the form of adoption. They are oftentimes restricted from adopting because religious bigots, for example, want to bar them from having children because they think that God says man and a woman is necessary or some bullshit. We have the issues with various states. I think it was Texas that passed a complete ban on puberty blockers and gender affirming care, and also decided that they would label any parents that actually followed the medical consensus as a complicit or as child abusers, essentially. So there's a lot of issues there, really. There are absolutely rights that are being restricted. And then, just to be clear, it's not purely rights on a legal basis, but also the general treatment of trans people in society as well. So it's not a right that people are nice to you, but it's also a fact that trans people are more likely to be victims of abuse. It is illegal to murder people, and trans people are disproportionately killed. Trans people are disproportionately kicked out of their homes, they're homeless, things like that. So there's a lot of social stigma as well. So I probably should have been more clear when I say rights per se, but I'm talking about overall the treatment of trans people in society.
Well, as far as like transition surgery and all that, transitioning surgery and all that, that's not a right. I mean, it's in the Hippocratic Oath for doctors that they're supposed to do no harm.
But this isn't a
And
doctor making this decision. So there are, for example, hospitals that have data that contradicts my position on puberty blockers. They say it's not as effective as previous studies have shown. So they themselves, the hospital, chooses not to give that treatment. That's different than a legislature, like what's happening with Texas, saying you are not allowed to give this treatment. You don't have a choice. It's not a Hippocratic oath thing. This is the state overreaching and saying you cannot treat trans people with what has been shown in many cases to be the better treatment for them.
Yeah, but that's subjective right there. It's like with cancer, you take the cancer out because that's what you need to do. We don't know uh we don't know the effects that this is going to have, especially on children.
It's
Ch
true that
a
we don't
child
know the full effects, but the thing is that we know enough about the effects, and we also know enough about the benefits of, say, puberty blockers and gender affirming care for kids with gender dysphoria, not just being trans, but gender dysphoria specifically. And we kind of get stuck at a crossroad essentially where we need to decide, do we just wait around and let trans people keep offing themselves at disproportionate rates? Or do we go with the evidence? And right now, the evidence suggests that this could be an effective treatment. So we go forward with that.
Well, dude, this is all having to do with this is all a result of social media and stuff like that because
Okay,
it's
for no,
evident.
it's please don't say
It's
dumb things like that. Don't.
okay. Well, then how come it spiked out of nowhere? Everybody becoming trans.
Why do you
It
think that it
just
spiked
I
back in like the 1950s, 60s, and 70s and so forth with interracial marriage?
because because it's a what's that called? It's a fetish. It's a fetish thing, dude.
Wait,
And
interracial
and
marriage is a
now
fetish?
no, give me a break, dude. No, you're saying it spiked with interracial marriage and all that.
I'm asking,
Interracial
why do you think that it spiked? Why do you think that interracial marriage spiked?
well, you tell me.
You can definitely guess, right? It was
Well,
legalized.
after well, it's not like transgenderism and all that wasn't legal.
It's not that it's not legal necessarily, but what it is that there's more social awareness of trans people. So you're going to see an uptick of people who are more comfortable identifying themselves as trans. Just like once it was legalized for interracial marriage and there was more recognition of interracial marriage and it began being socially recognized as a valid form of marriage, we also saw spikes there.
Okay, but you're comparing marriage to up until recently was considered uh 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 medical condition, like
It still is.
psychological.
Gender dysphoria is a medical condition.
Okay. So why are we supporting it? Why are we encouraging it?
Well, we're not. We're supporting their validity and their identity and supporting the treatment to help them get better from the gender dysphoria. And
By
conservatives want to stop that.
by chopping off body parts and
Do you really think
uh
that's what trans surgery is? Like, just do you think that like 7-year-olds are going into clinics having their private parts chopped off?
well, when they're that young, it starts with the puberty blockers and all that. And isn't that like being used like off label? Like they weren't made
Just if it's
for
being used off label doesn't necessarily mean it's not correct or effective. There are plenty of studies showing that the suicidal ideation of trans people greatly decreases when they receive gender affirming care, including puberty blockers, and are met with acceptance from their family. So that plays right into what I'm saying, which is that there is a mental condition, which is the gender dysphoria, which is the deep incongruence between the way that your brain perceives yourself as compared to your body. That incongruence literally demands treatment because we've seen what happens to trans people who don't receive treatment and they have a very high suicide rate. It's very sad.
but when you're doing that to children that young who don't even understand sex or gender, you know, uh how how could you let them determine determine their gender and all that?
You're not really. Like what you would have is you'd have a kid who might say, I am this identity, or excuse me, sorry. They might say, I'm a boy, I'm a girl, whatever. Then you would take them to a doctor. And it would be ultimately the doctor making the decision and a therapist. And there's a process you go through. It's not just like, Mom, I want to play with an Elsa doll. Okay, let's take little Johnny to the gender clinic. Like That's not how it happens. It's a long process where trans kids or kids with gender dysphoria go through therapy and they are evaluated and determined to be gender dysphoric. And when it's recognized that they have severe gender dysphoria, they move forward with treatment. And puberty blockers, although there are some risks with it, of course, as there is with any medication, it's also largely reversible. So pausing
Okay.
puberty, letting them kind of figure out what they want to do next, is the best move, right? Because if they go through the wrong puberty, that only further exacerbates the incongruence between their perception and their body.
Okay, but it's not largely reversible. You see, especially the physical, uh, the physical changes and all that, the more masculine facial features and all that.
I think that you're
Those,
mixing up hormones. So hormone treatment is not really reversible. You're right about that. But puberty blockers simply pauses puberty. That's it.
and then it just comes back if you stop doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Your puberty just continues when you stop taking the puberty blockers.
Okay, you don't see any sort of repercussion. Sorry.
It's okay.
Any sort
Repercussions.
of repercussions from stopping something natural like puberty.
Do
You
you
don't
see any
think that'll happen?
repercussions? Do you see any repercussions from letting somebody with gender dysphoria go through the wrong puberty, where it's been shown that their suicidality goes up after the fact?
Uh, I don't know about those studies. The only ones I've heard about are the high suicide rate of transgender people.
Right. And they do have a high suicide rate. That's correct. But the way in which we go about fixing that starts with puberty blockers if we're talking about a child with gender dysphoria.
Okay, and back to the social media thing real quick. The rise and suicides, like from that, it's not just transgenders and all that. It's kids in general. Uh it's it's being teased online, cyberbullying, stuff like that. It's not just happening to trans people.
Well, what's
It's
being
happening
teased
to
online? You think people are getting bullied into being trans?
No, no. What I'm saying is like the suicide rates and all that. It's not it's not I don't believe it's so much, not getting their gender affirming care and all that. It's
Well,
it's just kids are, dicks,
okay,
and
if somebody's getting bullied online, that's different. That's different than somebody getting bullied for their identity, for being trans, right? So like there's not just a high suicide rate amongst like social media users. It's a high suicide rate specifically in the trans community. It's
no, I
something to do with them being trans, right? It's either conservatives will tell you that it is a mental illness to be trans, and that's why they kill themselves at higher rates. Where I would say it's an external reason as to why trans people are killing themselves at higher rates. It is not actually a mental illness to simply be trans.
and you're saying that the reason is from being discriminated against and all that.
Discriminated against and possibly gender dysphoria. If they're suffering from gender dysphoria, that's very, very bad on their mental health. Discrimination, no acceptance from parents. Some people get kicked out of their homes simply because they came out as trans or even gay, honestly. So, yeah, there's a whole slew of issues there that trans people face.
Yeah, but with gay people, I mean that's just wrong. That's something I believe you're born with and all that. But dysphoria, you don't treat that by encouraging it. And as as far as being discriminated against nowadays, trans people are praised and celebrated, dude. I
Yeah,
don't,
because it takes a lot of
and
bravery to be trans.
it's not like the parents who support this, man, are just as mentally ill doing it to their children as the children are.
You
It's
genuinely don't know what you're talking about. And I don't even mean that as an insult necessarily. So, You say that we don't treat the gender dysphoria by giving into it. We're not giving into it. We're treating it by gender transition.
What are you talking about? Like you have the people with gender dysphoria, that don't feel like they should have a leg or something, uh, and just weird,
That's not
just
gender dysphoria. Thinking that you don't have that you don't have legs or something is not gender dysphoria.
that's one form of it. Yeah, uh when it, like you've heard about the surgeries where like people have like a leg removed
I
because
heard
they
about
feel like
one thing that happened like that in like 20 fucking 13.
okay,
So there's a
and
big difference here, right? Is that removing your body parts, perfect healthy body parts, like a leg or an arm for no good reason, does harm to the individual. Whereas helping a trans person transition and validating their very real gender identity benefits them.
you think removing like a perfectly good breast is fine, or you
If
know
they're of
uh
age to consent to that, yeah.
okay, so
If they
you
have
are
gender dysphoria, it's been shown that that betters their mental health. Not all trans women get surgeries like that either, but if they do, it betters their mental health.
okay, but if this is the case, then why are there so many suicides?
The suicides are significantly less after they transition.
Okay, that does see you're just saying the high suicide rate and all that of transgender people. I haven't seen any studies or anything that
Do you want me to
show.
send you some?
I don't and I don't think the studies have, if there are studies, they haven't, there's no way they could have been done long enough to actually
You might be
uh
surprised. Let's see, when did
because
this
I mean
start?
when were these studies started,
So
you know?
there's a systematic review of 55 different peer-reviewed articles published in English between 1991 and June 2017. It's a pretty good window
Okay.
of time there.
Okay, and how are they determined? Like what's the control group?
You can
Um
scroll through it, but the point of a meta-analysis, like systematic review like this one, is that even if it has a small control group or even if it has a small sample size, combining it all um, to get a larger result is how meta science works. Is it
okay.
compensates for potential flaws in the one individual studies. Like, okay, this one didn't have as good enough of a control group, or this one had a really small sample size. By themselves, they're probably not great, but combined with all the other literature, that's when it becomes more compelling.
No, I understand what that is, meta-analysis and all that. The and I and just so you know, I'm a pretty open-minded person. I'm not like gonna I'm not calling to thrash you or try to, or I don't have like a very solid point. It's just from my perspective right now, this is just the way I feel. Uh,
Well, you should
you know.
definitely try to get off the way you feel and actually like look at what the
Well,
empiricism says on the issue. And it seems as though the empirical reviews here are pretty conclusive that there is a consensus that transitioning betters the mental health of trans people. So that's the big difference. Cutting off your leg because you want to is not the same as having an intrinsic identity in which how you perceive yourself differs from your biology. And cutting off your leg because you want to doesn't better your mental health, whereas having a gender transition surgery when you're old enough to consent to that does.
okay, but once again, some of this is common sense. Like when you're so young, uh, you don't even really understand sex, you know?
But we're
So
not
how,
talking about young people having gender transition surgeries. We're not talking about people having their genitals changed or whatever. We're talking about with people that are young going on puberty blockers, which is safe and reversible largely.
Largely, what's not reversible?
There is a potential that it can lead to a slight decrease in bone density or height. So, I mean, like any medication, there's a potential risk there. But what's actually interesting is, let's say that the child around like 10 or 11, before they start puberty, has been confirmed gender dysphoric and they go on the puberty blockers. Um, Once they reach 17 or 18, 16, 17, 18, around that range where they are older, more mature, and recognized as having the ability to consent, then they can also begin hormones. And what's interesting is that hormone treatment actually fixes the decreased bone density that results from puberty blockers. So if they go forward with transition, which most people with gender dysphoria do, then that's not actually going to be like a long-term negative.
Okay, I haven't seen any studies on that. I have looked at some studies. It's not just all feeling and all that, but as when I talk about feeling, I'm talking about like me growing up, all my friends and all that, things we wanted to be when we grew up and all that, and just how drastically things change. You
Things have
see
been changing
the
forever, though. People could have said the same thing when black people were now citizens, you know? Me and my friends grew up, and it was just me and my white friends hanging out in school, and now all of a sudden there's blacks everywhere. Like, they could have said the exact same thing. Things change, progress happens. We become more accepting of individuals and marginalized groups, and then we move forward with the best way to help their issues.
okay, but that kind of goes back to the trans rights then right there, more accepting and all that. I still don't get what rights they don't have.
I just explained to you what's happening in Texas, for example, where they're trying to bar gender affirming care when that's been demonstrated to better their mental health.
Are they banning it for children or are they banning it for
Yes.
everybody? Are they banning it for everybody?
I think it's for kids.
Okay, it seems like that is something that should
Texas governor calls
it,
to label gender affirming care for trans kids as child abuse.
uh that just I just agree with that. That just seems kids don't understand sex. They don't
Hold on. We're
understand
not talking about sex
gender.
here. We're talking about having an incongruence with your body. And also, yes, they do. You'd be surprised. So let's go through this, okay? What determines if something is child abuse?
uh Drastically changing child's development,
So if you
you
decide to
know
sit your kid down and homeschool them instead of sending them to public school, that's changing their development in many ways. Is that child abuse?
but I don't see how that would be negative. I could see like
Exactly. There you go.
emotional
You got it.
development.
Child abuse is doing something that results in a harm to your child. Getting them treatment for having a real mental illness is not a harm, it's a benefit. So labeling it as child abuse is completely backwards.
Okay, I think we're probably just going to be going around in circles on this.
No, we're not going in circles. I just think that you kind of lack understanding about this. And I'm not even saying that as like a massive diss or anything. It's just you're trying to appeal to common sense. This is not a common sense thing.
it's it's what medical and it's you see the parents and all that support this. They're out of their freaking minds, man. It's total Munchausen's by proxy, dude. They're the same people who make up cancer for their kids and all that
It's
just to
not the
get the
same because you know
get
what the
the
big
praise
difference
and all
is?
that.
If they make up the fact that their child has cancer and then they take them to the doctor, they're not going to be confirmed to have cancer. If you take your child with gender dysphoria to the doctor, they will be confirmed gender dysphoric, or they'll be told they don't actually have gender dysphoria, and then they'll move on. They won't pursue
But
treatment if they don't actually meet the criteria necessary for gender dysphoria. My issue here is that
but
you're kind of just like making assertions and just like assuming it. You're like, all the parents are crazy. I mean, I could just as easily say that I think a lot of parents that homeschool are fucking insane, but I don't think that you would be out here advocating against homeschooling.
I'm not a big fan of it, but no, but like Munchausen's, you actually have parents that make their children sick.
I know what you're talking about, but
Okay,
you are not
well,
able to just convince your child they have gender dysphoria. It's not like that.
yes, you can. You see it all the time, man.
Do
The
you
parents
recognize
that
that in order to have a diagnosis, you need to be gender dysphoric for a minimum of 6 months? Do
do
you
you
think that a
think that's
parent
long
can
enough?
convince their child to have gender dysphoria for 6 months straight? How would that look, and how would that actually happen to the extent of them being confirmed gender dysphoric by a healthcare professional?
When you start indoctrinating them at 4 or 5 years old,
Do you have any examples
it's
of
quite
this?
easily done. How about uh, there was in Texas that, and I know there's other examples too, but specifically the one that comes to mind is the the little boy who his mom named him Luna or something like that. I'm
Yeah, and
sure
what that
you may
was
have
is the
heard of
child
that.
was actually confirmed gender dysphoric, but his father, or excuse me, her father was fucking insane and didn't want his child to continue pursuing treatment, even though she had been confirmed gender dysphoric.
Okay, but you're saying the dad was a lunatic, but how
Yes,
do you know that?
because
Like,
the child was confirmed to have gender dysphoria, and the father was ignoring what the doctor was saying. Second of all, they were only allowing the child to socially transition, so dressing like a girl or dressing like the identity in which they identify with. The father was just like against this for some reason, and it became a big conservative talking point.
okay,
But
but
you're kind of jumping all over the
you're
place a little bit here. First, we
but
were starting with
you're going to, the argument of, authority, which would be the doctor. Okay, some of the worst freaking things to happen in history have been done by doctors.
that doesn't matter. I'm pretty sure this is a logical fallacy. Just if things were bad before doesn't mean we can't trust things now. If you were at the doctor and they said, "Hey, you have cancer. I'm really sorry. We need to act now." Are you going to be like, "Well, in 1943, you guys were wrong about that"? No, that's not how this works.
Okay, well, how about like the prescription of medications and all that, and doctors pushing those on people, just for kickbacks from drug companies and all that. I mean, as somebody who, you know, suffers with bipolar and schizophrenia, I've had a massive uh, reaction to like Prozac, uh,
This is
and
different from gender transition. Like, that could be an issue in and of itself, but again, that doesn't mean that a diagnosis of gender dysphoria is somehow invalid.
okay, but the point I'm making is that we can't put 100% trust in doctors. There can't be
You're right.
any. Are you saying there can't be any skepticism on any of this?
There can be
Once again,
skepticism, but you're not being skeptical. You're making a bullface assertion that's based on absolutely nothing and then running with it because you just are kind of icked out about the trans issue.
it's not about being icked out about it. Not one bit. Not like I'm like ew, That's not what it is at all. It's that so many kids nowadays, and it seems like we talk about social constructs and all that. It seems like, the cult personality and all that. It's just it's what's trendy, what's in right now. People
So,
like getting
no, this is
people
this.
don't
Okay, I'm going to cut you off now because everything you're saying is so dumb. So, according to Forbes, Luna knew that she was transgender from a young age and declared, "I'm a girl" at age 3. At the time the article was published, she had also received a diagnosis of gender dysphoria from several medical experts. Vox reported that
okay.
physicians, school staff, and family members have all testified in court that Luna has consistently and persistently identified as a girl, with her mother affirming her identity.
And I've read about this too. Number one, you can't figure out at 3 years old if you're a boy or a girl. That's
You're
ridiculous to
right. That's
even
why they
think that.
received a diagnosis of gender dysphoria from several medical professionals, and this didn't even happen when the child was 3. They were like 7 or
Okay,
8 at this point, right?
but when your father is you're taken away from your father and only left with your mother, who keeps confirming this like to you, like, yes, you're a girl. Here's a pretty dress, buying them dresses and all that, and you know, of course, the child's gonna think it's a girl if it's being, stuffed. Its brain is being stuffed with, this stuff when
So then
it's,
why did they say they're a
3 years
girl at
old.
only age 3 before that happened?
When I was 3, I asked for a Barbie for Christmas. Does that make me a girl?
No, but if you said I am a girl and that was a persistent thing you continued to say as you got older and older and then you were diagnosed as gender dysphoric from several different medical experts, yeah.
It
You're simultaneously contradicting yourself. First you're saying they don't understand their gender, they don't know, but the reason that this person thinks they're a girl is cuz they had their brain filled with all this bullshit. But at the same time, this person is saying they are a girl before anybody said anything about that.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like a child's mind, it's so malleable. So, of course, they don't know what that is, gender and all that. But if you're stuffing its head
Then
with
why did the child say they are a girl at age 3 before any validation was done?
because it knows masculinity and
She knows
femininity. Like,
masculinity and femininity.
yes,
So kids do
boys.
recognize a state of gender. You're literally going all over the place. You're saying they don't know what they're talking about. Then you're saying the only reason they're saying they're a girl is because they were told that they're a girl. But then when I ask why they said they were a girl before anything like that even started, you said, well, because they have an understanding of their gender.
No, it's the complexities of it. It's not just like the simple colors and all that and toys. You know, that's what they understand as far as that, dresses and stuff like that. My sister wears a dress. Hey, I want to wear a dress too, you know,
If you
stuff like
literally
that.
think that
You
that's
don't
all
know
that
the
happened,
you
then
don't
I
know
don't
the
know what else to tell you. Like you're
you
just
don't
you're
know the
just denying
complexity
reality. I
of
think that it's your mind that's actually malleable because it's clearly been warped by I don't know, Matt Walsh or Blaze TV or Fox News or something because what
Matt
you're
Walsh is retarded, dude. Can't stand that
well
guy.
what you're talking about is right in line with his bullshit talking points. Like I literally don't know what else to tell you at this point. You called me a vagina and it seems as though you don't really have any idea of what you're even arguing against. You just kind of have this feeling, this sort of hunch that like, well, it's just common sense, trans bad, lol, like you're not really making any sense right now, bro.
Well, it's as far as the whole doctors thing goes too. It's been shown that doctors are being bullied into, this like the whole definition of gender dysphoria was was changed, and
How is it
it
changed?
well it went from like a serious uh you know psychological uh psychological problem and all that to being look looked up upon like it's
No,
something.
you're totally confusing this. Let me try to walk you through this briefly. This conver's getting a little old though. So, first and foremost, gender is a form of identity. It is a way that in which you perceive yourself. It is a self-identification and a self-perception. Okay? Gender dysphoria is a mental issue that comes from the fact that the way in which you perceive yourself and identify yourself is not in line with what is usually correlated with your gender identity, in this case, sexual characteristics. These are two separate things. Nobody's saying, oh, you have gender dysphoria, what a hero. People are saying, you are a girl, that is what your gender identity is. We recognize that that's your gender identity. And we commend you for being brave enough to come out as a girl and go through all the possible bullshit that you're going to receive. And we also recognize that you have gender dysphoria, and the best way to treat that is via psychological and or excuse me, with gender transition, whether that's socially transitioning, puberty blockers, and as they get older, hormones, and then maybe sex reassignment surgery.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I guess we'll just agree to disagree right now. But
I mean, you're
uh,
yeah, we can agree to disagree, but like the whole time it's just been sourced. Trust me, bro.
okay, it's as you can tell, stuttering and all that. I'm not the most articulate person. It's
It's okay. I'm not
uh,
gonna get mad at you for not being super articulate. It's okay, and I appreciate you coming on here. I know it's kind of nerve wracking getting called in on the show or whatever, but it's just that like when you donate, call me a vagina, and then you say, yeah, I'm down to talk. Let's go, Hunter, and then
yeah,
we talk about
it's
these things. It's not about whether or not you're articulate. It's ultimately about the
yeah,
arguments you're making, and I don't feel as though you're making
you
any
know it's
arguments.
trolling, dude. You know it's trolling, man.
So this whole time you
That's
were trolling?
trolling. No, not with my arguments with Hunter equals vagina. Come on.
Okay, well, yeah, I just want you. I don't want you to go away from this conversation thinking, dude, Hunter just thought that I was lame or brain dead or whatever because I wasn't articulate. That's not the case. Not everybody needs to be articulate, and I'm not judging you for that. It's that whether or not you're articulate is aside the point from the fact that you are not laying out any good arguments. You're just making an assertion. But
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to agree with you on the, you know, letting letting the letting the whole surgeries and all that for kids go through. Well, not surgeries, but puberty blockers and all that, because I mean the best the best studies we're gonna have to have from it are gonna be from it actually being done,
which we have
So
that from 1991 until 2017.
yeah.
It's over 30 years of data we have showing that it's beneficial to the well-being of trans people. But I sent you the thing that you can look over if you'd like. But yeah, I appreciate the conversation. If I were you, I would just think about these things because a lot of the times the reality or the fact of the matter is simply just not intuitive. It's not common sense. I said this with the earlier caller. Like it would be common sense that the world is flat. But just if it intuitively and common sensely seems as though it is, doesn't actually mean that is the fact of the matter. It might seem out of line with common sense that somebody can be a different gender, and the way that you actually treat that is by validating that gender. But at the end of the day, common sense really has no bearing on this. What we go with is the evidence. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click the bell so you get notified when I drop a new video.